At that particular time, Vice President Daniel Arap Moi claimed that his assassination was monstrously conceived, but brilliantly planned and executed. What did it signify?
Well, he was killed by people who seemed to know what they were doing, or whoever it is that was. There is a mystery about his death. Mm-hmm. And for Vice President Moi at the time to say that it was masterly executed, mm-hmm.
He
probably knew something because he was the Vice President. Mm-hmm. And he was privy to a lot of information as Vice President at the time. When it happened in July of 1969, of course it was a shock to most Kenyans, mm-hmm. and many people in the world. It was a shock because the image of Tom Mboya was one thing. This brilliant, articulate, photogenic, hardworking, persuasive young man, relatively young man, who supposedly is loved by almost everybody. And then this happens. So who could it be? That was the question. Mm-hmm. But that's one image. The other part is that his days were gone as the global player. Mm-hmm. There's a time when he was the global player. But by the time of his death, his days were gone. Only that it took some people a lot of time to come to know it, to realize that that's what had happened. And at the time, he seemed to be struggling himself to find his place in the world and be accepted that way. There seemed to be that struggle internal, mm-hmm. and around his people or whoever was. So there were dynamics taking place that were not very favorable to him as a person, whether it's within Kenya or outside Kenya.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know we'll go to that one. Let's look at how the case was managed after he was taken out. When you look at how they managed the people who accessed the gallery, foreign journalists, all journalists, but mostly foreign journalists being blocked from entry into the public gallery in the courtroom. What did it signify?
I will not be able to say why that was done, or whatever the reason.
But did it mean something?
Well, the court system at the time was the one to decide who to let in and not let in. Mm-hmm. I think the courts still have that leeway. Why they would choose some people and not others is another matter. Mm-hmm. Yes, somebody was arrested and he was tried and convicted. Now there may be debates as to whether the trial was fair or not fair, or whether he was the right person or not. The basic facts are clear that Nahashon Isaac Njenga Njoroge was arrested and convicted. Mm-hmm. So the debates that have come thereafter is whether he was the right person.
Whether he was the gunman or not.
So whether he was a gunman or not, does the matter end there? Or is there something more to it? Was he simply an instrument to something, to some forces? That remains to be determined. And that's why we have a lot of theories running around saying who might or might not have been interested in his death.
So when you talk about the theory, we've talked about the process having been smoothly managed,
yes,
until Nashon Njenga threw in a phrase, the big man.
We're very early in the trial. Why ask me? Why are you harassing me? Ask the big man. Eh?
Yes.
And the question is, who is the big man in this picture? Because there are speculations. Or could it be Jomo Kenyatta? Could be it someone else? Or he's a small fish, in theory. Eh? But this small fish seems to interact with very big fish. Yeah. He knew Mboya as a person. So he said, and he knew not just Mboya, but also other politicians. He's somebody who had traveled widely. So the question is, whom did he refer to as the big man? The assumption that it was Jomo Kenyatta is just one assumption. it may not be valid. And I think Jomo Kenyatta himself was shocked by because it shook him up a little bit. Those who claim that he was a threat to Kenyatta's presidency, I think they stretch a little bit more. But was he a possible threat to other people in terms of power? And to discuss whether he was a threat to other people, you go back to 1964, if not before. See the Constitution, the Republican Constitution, which Mboya was in charge. See, the Independence Constitution was one, the Republican Constitution was another. But in the crafting of the Republican Constitution, and it was expected that Kenyatta was going to be the president. It was also assumed that Jaramogi Oginga Odinga was going to also be what? The vice president. So there was that kind of general feeling. And when you look at that constitution, what did it say? That should there be a vacancy in the presidency, the vice president will not automatically step in. That was Mboya's work. And then the matter will be left to the cabinet and the parliament to see who can persuade who. Which goes back to the politics of Kenyatta's death, which began when he was in jail. And the issue was, since he was supposed to die at one point or another, who was going to take over? Because by 1958-59 it was clear Kenyatta has to be the one. You're not going anywhere without Kenyatta, although he was in jail. And so from there you start thinking, now, he is the one who has to be there. But he's likely to die soon, because he was ailing, he was an old man. And the question was always, who would replace Kenyatta in case it happens? And even in the colonial days, I think the officials, they had a standby kind of explanation. In case he croaks, because that's how they explain, croaks. Then you say, this is what happened. So if the colonial government does not get blamed for killing him. There was that kind of thing. But at the same time, there was that question is, when that happens, then who should take over? And the debate appeared to be between Mboya and Jaramogi. And their rivalry had started at that time. It became very intensified in 1958. Because Mboya was the poster boy for the West. And that's why they promoted him very well and campaigned for him, all those things. Jaramogi was older than Mboya in age and in politics. And he was one of those people who was asking, who decided that Mboya is the leader of the Africans? Because that's what the media was saying. Mboya is the leader of the what?
The Africans.
And the others asking, and who made him? We were elected at the same time. So you have that rivalry, that taking place. So there was that question. Even at independence, you have the Americans and others saying, in case it happens, make sure that Mboya is in a nice place to take over. Which explains some things that are happening. So the question of Kenyatta's potential death was always a factor in that. And that's why the Constitution of 1964 made it clear that the sitting vice president will not do what? Take over in case it happens.
So when did it change to 90 days?
That's part of the game, Now, in 1968, 67, 68. So in 66, Jaramogi is kicked out. The Lemuru Conference.
Yes.
And when they created Majimbo vice presidencies, and then Jaramogi left because in anger and created KPU. So in terms of the equations, Jaramogi was theoretically out as of 1966-67. And then Kenyatta appeared to be sick. And then you have the political maneuverers. And now, this constitution that was created with Jaramogi out of the way, who is likely to benefit out of it in case Kenyatta dies? And it appeared that Mboya was the one who was what? Who had ability to manipulate and cajole and the parliament and to say he's the one. That was the concern. So we had changed the constitution moment in 1968.
Yes.
Because of that fear that Kenyatta might go. And that's when the drastic changes were imposed. Now, who was the vice president at the time? It was Daniel Moi.
Moi.
Who had replaced Murumbi.
Murumbi had resigned.
Yeah, he said he was sick or something like that. After barely a year in office. And he probably was kicked out or shoved off. And so, because when he was resigning, and Charles Njonjo was laughing at him and telling him, "You're finished, Joe. You're finished." So, 68 was a serious time. That's when they amended the constitution to say that in case it happens, the sitting vice president will be there for 90 days and then you can have an election. That's when it was done. That's when they removed the idea of independent candidates. You have to have a what? A political party. That's when they put it there. That's when they put in the detention without trials. For people who are so crafty, they commit crimes and you cannot pin them down. So in theory, yeah?
Yes.
So they passed a raft of amendments, some of them clearly designed to stop Tom Mboya. There was one provision which people rebelled against. It said that changed the age of eligibility from 35 to 40. By then, Mboya was about 38 at that time. So people say, wait a minute, what the hell is it? It's too blatant, yeah? So that one was shelved, but it was there. These amendments, the anti-Mboya amendments, passed. And that's why they say that you have to have a party in order to be what? To be a candidate in anything. And at the time, there's only you can ignore KPU as a force. The main force was what? KANU, eh? So if you have a problem getting KANU ticket, then you don't become what?
You don't become the president.
You don't become a candidate.
A candidate, in the first place.
In the first place. So that's when the 3 months provision was put in. Later, there will be another attempt to change the constitution which failed. Now, people remember the one that failed and not the one that passed. The 68 one passed and created all those restrictions. So, and clearly it was targeting Tom Mboya. Yeah. And by then, that I was saying, the dynamics were changing everywhere. So
from what you say, it's now clear that quite a number of people wanted Mboya gone.
Well, they wanted the path cleared. Mboya cleared all the Jaramogi. He's the one who did it. Yeah, this is a Majimbo thing. It was the Mboya's way of fixing Jaramogi. You see, the thing is...
so, actually, Mboya was used to deal with the Oginga Odinga.
Yes, the question is who used him.
Then after he achieved...
Then he became, he now is one of the players trying to waiting for Kenyatta to die.
Early 1969, around there.
No, 68.
68.
Yeah. So they said, hey, if it happens now, who takes over? And they say, it's Mboya. So who else were those others who were interested in the job? And he was not alone.
There are people who said, wait a minute.
Yeah, let's change this thing. That's when they changed the constitution to remove that provision that Mboya had put there.
You do not necessarily need to be there.
You don't need to be the vice president in order to step in.
To step in.
So they changed that and they said the vice president steps in.
Which virtually now locks Mboya out.
Yeah. You know, so that provision, he's locked out. And who was sitting there as vice president? somebody who had a lot of political experience from 1955 when he joined LegCo.
Yes.
Daniel Moi. So that's, the 68 was momentous. And then what happened in 69, they consolidated those amendments and reissued the constitution afresh with those kind of things. So it became very clear that by 68, Mboya was not in the favorite books of a lot of people. Yeah.
So he had become like domestically isolated somehow?
No, here he was getting isolated. There's no question. His base used to be in Nairobi. And he appeared as if he had sensed that he was losing. So he started creating a place for himself in Rusinga, to move. Actually, he was creating a base in Rusinga. And there was that feeling of Charles Robia was going to be a threat, the former mayor, the first African mayor of Nairobi. And he was also now thinking he should get into parliament. So there was those kind of commotions taking place. Internationally, in the US, where he used to have a lot of support, there was change of government.
JF Kennedy had been assassinated?
Yeah, JF Kennedy was assassinated in 1963. And Mboya was credited for having helped JFK to become president. Not very many votes, but the symbolic, associated with Kennedy's support for the airlift. And then, in fact, Mboya's action was debated in the US Senate in 1960. Actually, not debated, but discussed. And the issue was because the Kennedy family had chartered an aeroplane for students to come from Kenya to go to the US.
The airlifting program?
Yeah, the airlift, the second one. Mboya had requested the US government to help. And the vice president at the time was Richard Nixon. And initially the US government said it had no money, it could not support that thing. So, but when they heard that the Kennedy family had done it, they also offered to do it. Which was then we said, no, we have already accepted this. So the image was that, and the vice president lost that election. Richard Nixon was the candidate for the Republicans, and the Republicans lost very narrowly. And that narrowness might have been attributed partly to Mboya and Martin Luther King and other, the black, galvanizing the black community for Kennedy. So there was that concern. And then Kennedy got himself killed in 63. And then his brother also gets killed in 68. So the younger brother, Robert, had visited Kenya. Visiting, he was a Mboya's guest in Kenya. So they're very close knit. So, but the Kennedys were out of favor in official circles.
So Mboya's shine in the White House had dimmed?
No, he had dimmed after Kennedy was killed. And then you have a President Lyndon B. Johnson who was quarreling with the Kennedy brothers, Robert. So, and then the Johnson was not amused. Then in 68, who wins the US election? Richard Nixon. And he won the election with the same margin he had lost in 1968. So very narrow. And Nixon made it very clear he wanted nothing to do with people like Mboya. Anyone associated with Kennedys, he wanted nothing to do with them. It's believed that Mboya was one of those Africans who are good at dismantling colonial institutions and not building anything. So when Nixon became president, he wanted his own Africans. And Mboya was not one of his people. So that's what I'm saying, the dynamics had changed. In the public image, yes, he was still very popular with some Americans. Okay. But in official circles, he was bad news.
So, if we go back to the killing of Tom Mboya, there's a group that was heavily blamed.
Yes.
Like fingers were pointed at them, the Kambu mafia. And when you look at it in 1969, we see the group was like almost hell-bent on neutralizing anyone who looked like would take over if Mzee left, as we had discussed earlier. How do you look at it? Because one of the people that some people claim that was a member of the Kambu mafia was the Attorney General. And when you look at the case, how the case was handled, one of the lawyers, Warihu, who represented Njenga, claimed that he was warned against bringing out issues that looked political at that particular time. So what do you make it? What do you make of it?
Well, there was what's been called the Kambu mafia. And sometimes that Kambu mafia appeared to be in conflict with other regions. With Nyeri, Murang'a, Meru, and now you talk about Charles Njonjo. And Njonjo was known to be a spokesperson for British interests. So if that's the case, you might ask, what was the British interest in it? Since it's very clear Njonjo was the spokesman for British interest. So if he was saying that, then what was the British interest? And that one is still to be investigated to understand clearly. Because whenever there was some serious issues, the British would make sure that their man, who was very powerful, Charles Njonjo, would look into that matter. That sort of thing. So when you raise that, then in the question I ask, what was the British interest?
Yeah, because when you look at it, even some of the later investigations revealed that the judge, Simpson, refused actually that the police, was it the deputy police commissioner? Yes, Bell, who gave the report of the investigations. He refused the interrogation on matters of how Njenga found himself with a gun that was only at that particular time assigned to VIP protection. Yeah, that's why you say, what was the interest? You know, Mboya had fallen out with the British. Yes.
Yeah, because he had become an American man. You know, he started as an instrument of British policy against the Mau Mau, because he's a Mau. He's connected with the Mau Mau. Without Mau Mau, there would be no Mboya. And he had been created to be the alternative to the Kenyattas, who are supposed to be to stay in jail for a long time. So when the Africans needed a new person they can call their own, somebody who is acceptable, somebody who is photogenic, articulate, very hardworking, and Mboya was all those things. And most important, who was not a Kikuyu. And Mboya just fitted the
profile.
The profile. And when they sent him to England at Ruskin's College, he was not going there to do a degree. It's to rub shoulders with the policymakers. And he was very well received by Marjorie Parham, who had a specialty in grooming African leaders. Then when he was there, he became an American project. Stopped being a British one. And the British were not amused because they were saying he's ours. They created him. And then here come the Americans, they'd steal him.
They took over.
They took over. And that's why they gave him a lot. The labor unions in America gave him a lot of money to build Solidarity. You know, Solidarity building in Komba.
Yes.
Court was the court headquarters.
Yes.
It's Mboya who built it with American money. As a way of promoting him and all those things. And so when you talk about Charles Njonjo, then the question comes, what was the British interest? Because Njonjo would not do anything just by himself. He was there protecting British interest all the time. So that comes up with so the question is deeper than sees the surface.
Now, because when you look at it, there's one question that comes up when you look at the murder of Tom Mboya. Who was Njenga, and what was his relationship to Tom Mboya? There are those who claim that actually they knew each other from party politics, that when he was a member of the right wing, Kanu's youth right wing, they participated and they worked closely, because Tom Mboya was then the Secretary General of Kanu. So they had close interactions. So that is why there are people who ask, was Mboya killed by his own boy? But now the question that comes in is, when you look at the trailing of how Mboya was trailed from his home to his office and then to the chemist where he was murdered, and it appeared that the assassin knew exactly where he would be at what time.
Yes, he did. And yes, the two of them knew each other. At least that became very clear. And maybe it might explain Mboya's reaction when he was coming from the chemist. And then he sees his friend holding a gun. Instead of ducking, he just... I mean, there raised a lot of questions. That Njenga was not just anybody. Mm-hmm. It is also possible that they had talked before. And so they knew where to meet. Because Mboya had jetted in the country the night before.
From Ethiopia.
From Ethiopia. He was supposed to be in England for some meeting or whatever. And instead of going to England, he returned to Nairobi. And I think the media were asking, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be in. Yeah, what are you doing here?
Even his close confidence.
Yeah. So, and I think his answer was, I'm busy in the country. I think that's a good answer. He's busy in the country. Now, for this person to know where he's going to be, where, at, when, they must have had some communication. And that's why when Njenga said that Mboya was his friend, it's possible. Now, what were they going to meet and talk about? If they were going to meet.
Is it also possible that people got hold, or people had already, for example, in let me say in movies we normally see where probably people turn your friends into gunmen? Was it like a situation where we see in movies in such a scenario?
Sometimes I think the assassination would make a good movie. When you make a good movie and then all those scenarios can be explored. Well, it does appear as if Njenga was well connected within the system.
Within the political system?
Within the, let's say, even the security system. Because, I mean, if he's carrying around guns and all those things, it looks as if he was well connected in different circles. And it could be, anything could have been. Because it's clear, as you said, Mboya and he were friends. And Mboya was not the only friend that he had. He had many, because this person who had been trained was in Bulgaria.
Yes.
And all those kind of things. And some of them, the training they get was whatever. And they can, and especially if they got into this Cold War business and scenarios, was Njenga a gun for hire? I don't know. It's a possibility that was it, if he did it, was it out of conviction? Then you wonder, conviction of what? What did he? So there could be, it's possible that he was a gun for hire.
Because the court then did not exploit the issue of the motive. The question did not come.
They were interested whether you held the gun and fired. The reason you did that is another matter. Is another matter. And yes, Mboya was a worried man before he died. And the exact who did it. I was painting the picture that there are some people who claim that the CIA did it. So why would the CIA do it? But then we have different environment in Washington. And the CIA were known to be very good at making people die. Disappear. And after all, they supposedly were involved in the Lumumba, Lumumba disappearing from the earth. So all these are explanations. If possible, then the interests of some external forces and the interests of some domestic forces might have coincided. And in that coincidence, then he disappears. But by the time of his death, Mboya did not have the clout that people think. Would like to say that he had. He did not. He did not have it. But he was still a big name, which whatever happened, the people react.
He was still young?
Yeah, he was young. He was. It looked as if that was a period when people were dying before they get to the age of 40. His friend Martin Luther King died in 1968. And he was not 40 years old yet. Malcolm X died in 1965. He was not 40 years yet. Huh? I don't know how old was Pinto.
Pinto was a very young guy.
Yeah. So he was not 40 yet. And Mboya was not 40 yet. So a strange coincidence. But what I'm saying is that the Mboya's position in the world had slid downwards. Mm-hmm. Not the way it was in the early 60s. It was less so. Mm-hmm. And the forces who feared his ability to maneuver things, manipulate, were also not sleeping. So in some way he was outmaneuvered or outwitted by his rivals, political rivals. That's what I was talking about, the politics of Kenyatta's death. So if he appears as if he's going to go, you have a lot of things happening. Mm-hmm. And in order people jostling for positions to see who is now ahead or who can be removed. To that extent, then Mboya seemed to fit that scenario.
Did you buy some of the theories that were given by the government at that particular time? One of them was that Mboya had learned of a plot, not Mboya, Njenga had learned of a plot by Mboya to assassinate President Kenyatta.
Well, that's a rumor I have heard that Mboya was a very ambitious man, that's true. And the claim that Kenyatta was staying a little longer than he should maybe facilitate
his earlier retirement.
Some retirement. But the constitution that was changed in 68 made it difficult for Mboya to take over, because before 68, maybe that could have
happened. Yeah.
Maybe, but after 68, with the new constitutional structure, the sitting vice president
will have taken over.
Yeah, it's very clear. He takes over for 90 days.
And which was Moi.
And who was Moi? And it was Moi, and who sees very far, and things like that. So the rumor that Mboya might have been impatient and might have discussed the way of persuading Kenyatta to get out of the way, and it was not happening. So that's the rumor, that since it was not happening, so maybe that's why they had a meeting with Njenga to find out what's. We don't know. These are rumors. But the claim about that is negated by the fact that the new constitutional dispensation would not have allowed Mboya to do anything. But then being a very resourceful person, probably there was fear of what else he can do. But if those other people who wanted power, who maybe had a problem with Mboya, but I don't think it's Kenyatta as a person.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you so much for that insight on the story of Mboya. We appreciate you and always welcome to the Kenyan Historian.
My pleasure.